sometimes you're not the best judge, because we can have kind of self-deception, right? Where we kind of talk ourselves into things like, oh, like I don't have a problem with like sex and nudity in movies. It doesn't affect me. Doesn't affect me, right? Um, but I don't know that we're always aware of the ways that things affect us. And so I think one guardrail is community. And so like processing in community a little bit, like if you're in a church or if you have a small group, like if everyone else in your small group is like, no, I don't think we should be watching that, like, and you're the only one saying, no, it doesn't affect me, so I'm going to watch it. Like, I think you should listen to that and let that be a little bit of a caution, because God puts us in relationships and community for a reason. Same thing with family. Like, sometimes I think about like, if this is a film that I would feel really uncomfortable watching with my wife or watching with my dad, when I was like a teenager. Everyone has those experiences where you're like watching something on TV and your dad walks in the room and you're like, "Oh, I need to like change the channel." But if you feel like awkward about that, like it's probably a good sign that this is not necessarily the most nutritious material for you. So yeah, I think you have to be really careful about judging for yourself the extent to which things don't affect you, because over time, the cumulative effect of media and content in media, I think, really does affect our hearts. I think one way you can start to see this is by like how unaffected you really get. Like, so with let's think about like language. So to kind of switch, like sexuality and nudity, that's an important thing, but like we don't often think about language. Like, can you watch a movie where literally every other word is like the F word and just totally not be affected by that and not feel that to be obscene and just unedifying? If you feel totally numb to that, I think that's a problem. I think that's a sign that maybe you've consumed a bit too much of this material over the years, to the point where now it doesn't even faze you. And you could do the same test with violence or sexuality, nudity. If you're like watching a movie that's like full of sex and violence and like none of it affects you, it doesn't prick your conscience, you don't have the impulse to like close your eyes or look away, that's a problem. Like, as Christians who are called to be, to think about what is like good and honorable, and that Philippians verse about like, think on these things. Like, our minds are supposed to be filled with like not profane, not explicit, not evil ideas. Like, we are to dwell on what is good. So I think as Christians, we really need to be careful that we don't get to a point where we're just unaffected by that content. That's probably a good sign that you need to pull back a little bit in your media habits, and try to retrain your affections and your like retrain your conscience, even, to get to a point where you're less, or you're just not as comfortable being exposed to that. And I would say that's happened for me, in my own journey. Like, maybe 20 years ago, when I was like 21 years old or whatever, like I was like a little bit less affected, because I was such a libertine in terms of like, watch this, watch that, like consume this, consume that. But over the last few decades, as I've kind of watched less and less of that stuff, and I've steered away from that content, I do find myself becoming more averse to it. Like, when I sit down in a film that's like full of just profanity and full of like grotesque violence, like I can't really do a lot of horror movies personally, because the horror movies today are just so gross, and like the decapitations and the like various ways that bodies are destroyed. And I just don't, I can't do that. And like, same with like sex and nudity. Like, I just don't, it makes me very uncomfortable to be in a movie with that content. And I think that's a good thing. Like, I'm glad that I have kind of retrained my conscience a little bit by the power of the Holy Spirit. It's not me, it's the Spirit working within me, and I'm grateful for that. Because I don't want to be numb. I don't think it's good to be numb to the content that comes across our screens.